Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi of Illinois. He's a member of both the Intelligence and Oversight Committees as part of the House's impeachment inquiry. Congressman, I want to first get your reaction to a pretty successful lawsuit that the House Democrats had been engaged in with the Trump administration over the contents of the Mueller report, and frankly, getting a court to uphold the idea that, yes, indeed, this is a formal impeachment inquiry. How important is this for your investigation?
I think it's important in the sense that, Republicans have been claiming that the impeachment inquiry is somehow illegitimate or it's illegal. But as you saw in the opinion, Judge Howell resoundingly ruled in favor of the notion that the impeachment inquiry is proper, and it compels the production of documents that the White House has otherwise been trying to prevent producing for purposes of the impeachment inquiry.
What material, I'm curious, do you think this is more significant because of the raw material you may be receiving or because of how the courts are characterizing the investigation?
I don't know. I don't know what those grand jury materials actually are, but I think that someone previously had mentioned that apparently President Trump or then candidate Trump had conversations potentially with Roger Stone about WikiLeaks that may have been in contravention of what he claimed was the truth before. And so we just don't know. We'll have to see what the grand jury materials actually are. But regardless, the ruling does really make it very clear that the impeachment inquiry is proper and that we have to continue with it right now, and that it compels a production of documents and testimony from the other side.
How much more evidence do you think you're going to need before you start laying out a public case here? I mean, it is this, and I've asked this, I think, of you before and of other of your colleagues. You can keep widening the probe. I mean, every day there's a new nugget. There's a breadcrumb about a trade deal, perhaps, with Ukraine. You've got this smaller materials. Some of your colleagues may argue to expand it even further. What's your sense of what you think the scope should be going forward?
Well, I think that right now we're still in the middle of this investigation, and the evidence seems to be mounting that there's corroboration for the whistleblowers' complaints. And even Mick Mulvaney's statement the other day, which I believe was very candid, that the military assistance in question to the Ukraine was actually conditioned on an investigation into Donald Trump's domestic political rivals. That being said, I'm not aware of any deadline or timeline for completion of this inquiry, except that we want to complete it ASAP, if for no other reason than that there's misconduct potentially going on right now in the White House. And so we got to put a stop to it and find out who's responsible for it ASAP.
So, well, I mean, does that mean this timeline of mid-November for hearings, which would then lead you to some form of potential articles in December, that still is a reasonable timeline, or does this stretch into 2020?
I really don't know. I'm being very honest when I say there has been no deadline communicated to me for any of these things. And I think that the American people don't want us to do this on some kind of a political timetable or calendar. I humbly submit. I think they want us to get to the bottom of exactly what happened, and to prevent it from happening again, we got to know the full extent of the scheme, and most importantly, who was involved with it and responsible for it, because we can't, on the one hand, perhaps hold one or two or three people culpable for it and then allow others to get off scot-free and maybe continue with the misconduct.
You think you're going to get government funded and this impeachment inquiry all sort of completed at the same time?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful we can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time. But in my humble opinion, I think that what's most important for us on the House Intelligence Committee and with regard to the impeachment inquiry is we just got to do our job. We got to do it as fairly as possible, withhold judgment until the investigation is completed, and make sure the process continues to be be fair. The other side keeps saying that it's unfair, but I just have to point out more than 40 Republicans are involved with these proceedings right now. They get equal time for questions and to make opening statements, and they can ask questions about any topic that they desire. And that's why their claims that it's unfair don't make any sense to me.
I think one of those 40 include the vice president's brother on that front. Very quickly, NAFTA 2.0, USMCA. Is that something you guys can? That has to be passed on a bipartisan basis. We know the complicated trade politics of both parties. We're in the highly polarized climate of impeachment. Can that get done in this environment?
Well, with regard to this particular agreement, my understanding is that Mr. Lighthizer and the trade office from the White House are negotiating right now with the Speaker, as well as trying to earn support from labor groups. I don't know the specifics of the negotiations. This is within the jurisdiction of the Ways and Means Committee as well. And I know Chairman Richie Neal is working hard on it. But, for sure, we know NAFTA is not a great agreement. It's something that has to be updated. But the question is whether what comes out of this would be better or worse than what we have now. In one regard, I have introduced, along with some of my colleagues, a big concern about provisions that would lock in what are called exclusivity periods with regard to biologics and prescription drugs. To me, that has no business being within the trade agreement because it basically prevents us from lowering the price of prescription drugs, which would be a horrible outcome and something that a lot of us want to see out of the agreement, along with enforcement provisions being stiffened and bolstered within the agreement for labor and environmental issues.
Well, you just outlined why I think walking and chewing gum is going to be highly difficult, I think, over the next couple of months. But we'll be watching and you'll be trying. Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thank you.